It is chiefly through books that we enjoy intercourse with superior minds. In the best of books, great minds share their thought with us, pour their souls into ours. God be thanked for books. Words of William Eleanor Chernin. Hi, my name is George Essien. I'm a life coach, a motivational speaker, and a peak performance consultant. I began with a very powerful quote about books, about the fact that books are very powerful and that you exchange your ideas and thoughts with people when you read their works. What style did I just use to open my presentation? That style is called the quotation opening. Whenever you are opening your presentation, you must remember that the open is supposed to grab attention. The open is supposed to stimulate interest. It's supposed to get people to be excited or to be willing or curious about what you're saying. So a quote is a fantastic way to open a presentation. A speech, every speech you have is broken into three parts. The first part is your opening, the second part is your body, and the last part is your close. Your opening, or what we technically call in public speaking, is your primacy, your first words, your first line of statement. And it's actually meant to wow the audience, to tickle their interest, tickle their fancy, make them interested in what next you're about to say. The body is meant to woo the audience, to draw them into your subject matter, into your discussion, to get them to understand it a little more, and it takes a large portion of the entire speaking component. And then finally, your close. Your close, or what we technically call your recency, or what some people call your conclusion, is meant to win the audience, to ignite them, to get them to take action. Every time you make a speech, every time you give a speech, whether it's a 2-minute speech, a 5-minute speech, a 10-minute speech, a 1-hour speech, always remember at the back of your mind that you need to have an opening, a body, and a close. Now, the opening is supposed to do a few things. What best ways are you supposed to open your presentation? I'll suggest some very powerful suggestions to you. Number one of the ways to open your presentation, as mentioned earlier, is to open with a quote. A quote is very powerful. It tells the audience that you're prepared. It also gets them to realize that you have done your homework, and it makes them, especially if the quote is an historic quote, begin with a story. Stories are hypnotic in effect. They capture the minds of the audience. A story is very powerful. A story is trance-inducing. It captures the imagination of the audience. It also captures the emotions of the audience, especially when it's a personal story. So start your presentation with a personal story. Don't make it lengthy and long. Make it short and straight to the point. And the interesting thing about your story is that your story should lead to your first point. You never just tell a story for a story's sake. Your story should lead to your first point. It's important you remember that. Your stories should lead to your first point. Questions arrest attention. If I make a statement, you might not remember or pay attention to what I have said. But if I ask you a question, what happens immediately is that I grab you by your mind and I get you to pay attention to what I am talking about. Questions are important. One fantastic way to open your presentation is to start or to begin with a question. Have you ever tried that before? Perhaps you begin with a rhetorical question. Just as the comedian should leave the audience laughing, the public speaker should leave the audience thinking. Grab the attention by asking a question. What questions does most of the time is that it gets people to start thinking, to start reflecting about what you are saying. So questions are quite important. Statistics are another fantastic way to open your presentation. Interesting facts and figures will get the attention of the audience. Remember that your opening is supposed to wow the audience. It's supposed to get their curiosity, to get them to pay attention to what you're saying. So find some very interesting statistics about what you are talking about. 55% of Nigerians are this, 20% of Nigerians or Americans do this. That statistic, that really in fact will be so exciting. You can begin with an interesting statistic that is a startling statement. For example, you can say that what you're about to learn in the next 45 minutes, you will not learn in 4 years within the walls of the university. That is startling, and that perhaps will get the attention of your audience. If you say something like, according to World Health Organization, so and so is happening, or this and this has happened, that grabs the attention. So you want to begin to use statistics in your presentation. Interesting thing about statistics is that you can interspice, just like you do with your quotes and your stories. You can interspice, you can spice up your presentation with a lot of statistics. So try today. Do your next speech by starting with a quote, using a question, or using a statistic to engage your audience. The beginning is the most important part of your presentation. It's so important, so very important, that you pay attention to your opening. In fact, you craft an engaging opening such that you engage the audience, you capture the attention of the audience. We've mentioned a few ways that you can open your presentation, and I want to share one more way you can begin to do well as a speaker and to open in a fantastic way. One way to do that is to use what we call icebreakers. What? Icebreakers. You heard me right. The word is spelled I-C-E-B-R-O-E-A-K-E-R. What that assumes is a metaphor, actually. What that assumes is that people are stiff and molded, they are iced, and what you want to do as a speaker is break the ice. You want to make them freer so that you can engage them some more. So you can begin your presentation with an icebreaker. Icebreakers are activities or games designed to help the audience get into your subject matter, to engage the audience and get them to be more interested with whatever it is you're about to say. So use icebreakers. There are what icebreakers? For example, they are interactive icebreakers. Get them to say, "Hi, anybody here? Can you just wave your hands to me?" Once they wave their hands to you, they are responding to you, and you're most likely to get them to pay more attention to you. I do complex icebreakers. I could do things like look at neighbor, eyeball to eyeball, tell them this or tell them that. I could get them to stand up to do an exercise. I could get them to shout, to change their seats. I know there are two kinds of icebreakers actually. We have what we call the introducers and we have the energizers. What are introducers? Introducers are those icebreakers you use at the beginning of a presentation, or those icebreakers that you use to quickly engage the audience. They are powerful. For example, when you tell them to stand up and meet your friend, meet that person, that is an icebreaker. When you tell them to smile at their neighbor, that is an introducer as an icebreaker. The energizer tends to be more physical and loud. When you get the audience to shout, to scream, to move, to do breathing exercises, then really you are engaging them in what is called icebreakers. Now, let me mention something that is important. It's a caution. Icebreakers may not apply to every public speaking setting. There are some public speaking settings that you don't want to use icebreakers. Perhaps you're in a formal setting, and the kind of icebreakers we use will most likely be light and not as aggressive as getting them to change their seats or move or to shout. But if you're in an informal setting or in a persuasive setting, then you really need to engage them some more, because that anchors whatever you're talking about to them into their soul. So you can begin your presentation with an icebreaker. You can transition from one point to another point, one topic to another topic with an icebreaker, as well as close with an icebreaker. Now, there are many other ways you can open your presentation, and I'll give you a few of them. You can begin with protocol. What's protocol? Protocol simply means every speaking setting, every public speaking setting is either formal or informal, and formal settings usually are governed by protocol. There's a way things are done. One of the things you want to do if you are the MC of the occasion is to have a conversation with the principal of the host of the event to find out what important dignitaries are available. It's also very important that you understand that proper emceeing is governed or is driven by honor, not just humor. Sometimes people think that you must make the audience laugh and laugh and laugh without paying attention to the order of the event and the honor that's associated with the event. So protocol is quite important. Even if you're not the MC of the event and you're giving a keynote speech or you're giving a toast, it's important that you understand the protocol. It's very improper to say standing on existing protocol or all protocol duly observed. It's only in Nigeria that is used. Outside of Nigeria, that is not used. It's important that you categorize the people and spend a few seconds honoring the people that you need to honor as you proceed with your presentation. So another fantastic way to open is to open with a protocol. You can also open with many other ways, including drawing from the previous speaker. If there was a speech that was done before and you are at that event, you can draw from certain points that he shared in your next speech, in the speech you're presenting, so that it looks as if it's a continuation of whatever was said before. Another fantastic way to open your presentation is to start with a very startling statement, a bold statement. Will have a very powerful effect on people. So start and begin with a bold or a startling statement. There are many other ways. You can begin with a song. You can begin with humor. Now, my take about humor, beginning your presentation with a humor, is that if you do a nasty job with your humor, it will probably affect your presentation. So beginning with a joke is not something I really encourage. You can eventually add your humor after you've started your presentation, but rarely ever start with humor. So these are various ways you can. Now let me also share what I call opening combo. What is an opening combo? An opening combo means that you are combining various ways of doing your presentation, various ways of opening your presentation at the beginning. I'll give you an example. Now I've mentioned that you can begin with a quote, you can begin with a question, you can begin with a statistic, you can begin with fact to start a statement, and many other ways. You can start with protocol and then add a quote, then tell a story. That combination is called an opening combo. When you do one or two ways of opening your presentation, that is an opening combo. So think about it. Be very creative, be particular about crafting your opening, just as much as you're particular about crafting and ending your close. Now your exits, your entry and your exits are quite important in your public speaking presentation. I hope you've learned something and I hope you've taken down some notes.